Okay, so here's my case study about who I am as a learner. So the first thing I learned from taking these tests is that I'm a people person and that my dominant value is like social value. And I learned also that I am apparently the lively center of attention, which basically means that I'm fresh, practical, and charming, but it doesn't really get to my head. I also learned that I have good interpersonal intelligence, which is basically the ability to understand and interact with others pretty easily. And the last thing that I learned about me being a people person is I learned that I am best in social settings. So next thing is I like to do things by the book usually while I'm learning, and how I found this out is that I am an ISTJ, which one of their attributes is that I like to enforce the correct order and do things by the book while I learn. I am right in between an introvert and an extrovert, which basically means I'm the perfect balance, and I'm a very versatile employee. My openness to experience is down to earth and pretty simple. Okay, so the next thing that I learned is that I am a good listener, and so the color test says that I'm a good listener. I don't really know how picking colors tells me that I'm a good listener, but it said that I am. And then I also have compassion fatigue, which basically means that I get tired and I listen and actually care a little bit too much, that I feel drained from it sometimes. And then I have good interpersonal skills, which basically means that I have the ability to understand and interact with others pretty easily. I am also creative, and again, the color test says I'm creative, but you know. And then the parenting test says that I will have creative ways of parenting because I know that not everything in parenting will be perfect all the time. And then my creative right brain will help me come up with new ideas while learning and working on a project. Okay, so the next one is that I'm responsible. I am an ISTJ, which means that I am very responsible whenever it comes to learning. And my conscientious test says that I am very reliable, organized, and responsible when it comes to school and work tasks. Again, being an ISTJ means that I'm very practical while learning and thinking about what it is that I am actually learning. And then the How Others See You test says that I'm the center of the attention because of my practicality. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of my weaknesses. And I have 2 strengths and 2 weaknesses with being emotional, so we'll go through the strengths first. So the color test says that I have very good emotional intelligence, and the emotional intelligence test says that I am apparently very good at expressing emotion. And then the weakness side of me being emotional is that I get very upset and emotional whenever I'm learning, and we found that out from the IPIP-NEO test. And then my next weakness is my insecurity. So being an ISTJ kind of means that I often blame myself whenever something goes wrong at school or at work or while I'm learning. And then the Enneagram personality test shows that I have anxiety and often feel insecure because of being a loyalist. And then I am easily upset while learning, which I also learned from the IPIP-NEO test. Okay, another weakness is that I am not very logical. On the vocab test, I lack the ability to identify the correct answer when I didn't actually know the right answer. And then my most minor value is theoretical values, which basically means I don't really like thinking about theoretical stuff that often. And then the hardest way for me to learn is logically. And I am not usually able to edit my writing pieces logically, which I think makes sense now thinking back on all of my writing pieces. And then being an ISTJ kind of means that I'm very stubborn, unfortunately, while learning. And according to the narcissistic test, I don't mind exploiting others to meet my own needs. I'm not sure if that's true, but I don't know. And then also, I am tough, uncompromising, and critical, according to the IPIP-NEO test. Okay, so how I developed as a learner. I think that after taking all of these tests, I have realized that I have different strengths and weaknesses, but I can use some of my weaknesses as strengths while learning. I also learned that I have a good balance between introvert and extrovert, and I can use this by taking good qualities of each and then putting them into what I am learning or what I'm doing at work. I learned that I am practical and do things by the book, but I am also creative in some aspects of learning. I also learned that I'm a people person and I know how to listen and how to interact with what they say. I don't think that a couple of years ago I would have been able to say that I'm such a good listener or that I'm practical. I believe I would have had way more weaknesses than strengths than I did while taking these tests now. I still have a lot more to work on as a learner, but I have come a long way in just a couple of years. So next I'm going to talk about how the chapters that we already read in this course relate to the test results that I just talked about. So sometimes I get stressed and have anxiety when a class is too hard. Some of my classes this year are a little above my zone of proximal development, which is Vygotsky's term for the range of tasks that are too difficult for children to master alone, but can be mastered with guidance and assistance from adults or more skilled children. So my next one is also relating to my insecurity. Over the course of a teaching session, a more skilled person, a teacher or more advanced peer, adjusts the amount of guidance to fit the child's current performance. So next year, I may need to change some of my classes so that I have a little bit less anxiety. And then here are a couple pictures about the zone of proximal development. Okay, so the next one is why I am not logical. Hypothetical deductive reasoning is Piaget's formal operational concept that adolescents can develop hypotheses to solve problems and systematically reach a conclusion. So maybe while I was growing up, I didn't have enough times where I had to come up with hypotheses or best hunches, which is why the test says I'm not very logical. And then the last one also has to deal with why I'm not logical. The formal operational stage, which emerges at about 11 to 15 years of age, is Piaget's fourth and final cognitive stage. At this stage, individuals move beyond reasoning only about concrete experiences and think more abstract, idealistic, and logical ways. So this kind of proves that it isn't like flipping a switch at 11, and it's a process and takes time to be able to fully use these logical skills. Okay, so next one is chapter 3, which is social context and socio-emotional development. So the first thing that I'm going to relate to this is my insecurity. One of the reasons that my test results might say that I'm insecure is because I am in the identity and role confusion stage of life. Adolescents try to find out who they are, what they are all about, and where they are going in life. They are confronted with many new roles and adult statuses, such as vocational and romantic. Being in this stage of life is stressful and anxiety-ridden to begin with, so this probably explains why I have an anxiety and I am insecure. So the next way that another tie to chapter 3 is how responsible I am. My parents, although children grow up in diverse families, and virtually every family, parents play an important role in supporting and stimulating children's academic achievement and attitudes towards school. My parents are and were very responsible about how I learn and what homework I have to do. They ingrained it in my head that homework should always be done and turned in at the right time. So the next one also has to do with my responsibility. Another reason that I think I am responsible when it comes to learning is because of the school I went to. In school, children spend many years as members of a small society that exerts a tremendous influence on their socio-emotional development. If I went to a school that wasn't as good as Northern High School, then I fully believe I would not be as responsible. They taught me to be responsible about school and how I learn. And then the last one is my creativity. All of my peers in my friend group were very creative in different ways. Having friends who are academically oriented, socially skilled, and supportive is a developmental advantage. I had great friends in elementary and middle school who all made me a creative learner. I would watch them to see how I could learn. Okay, so chapter 4 is all about individual variations. So in this chapter, it talks about what intelligence really is. In 1912, William Stern created the concept of intelligence quotient, IQ, which refers to a person's mental age divided by chronological age multiplied by 100. This is one way to think about what intelligence really is. In one of the tests, I found out that my IQ is about 117. This wasn't an official score, but William Stern's IQ has left such a big impact on what people think of intelligence is, that we are still using his system today to help schools know where children will learn best. So my stubbornness. Sometimes while I'm learning, I have a pessimistic learning style, which involves having negative or pessimistic expectations for the future. This may be why some of the tests thought that I was pretty stubborn while I learned. And then why I'm emotional. In chapter 4, it talks about the super traits, which are openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And when I took the test, the neuroticism part of it said, my score in neuroticism is high, indicating that you are easily upset even by what most people consider the normal demands of living. People consider you to be sensitive and emotional. So, why I'm not logical. Usually while learning, I am impulsive, which is not learning, or which is not very logical. The impulsive learning style involves a student's tendency to act quickly and impulsively on the accuracy of the answer. Me not being impulsive may be a reason that the tests think I am not very logical. Okay, so chapter 5 is all about sociocultural diversity. So I believe that one of the reasons why I'm a good people person is because I don't often gender stereotype, which is stereotyping students as masculine or feminine can have significant consequences. People tend to like me more, I think, because I don't do this that much. Also, I try my best not to have gender bias while learning. An example of gender bias is teachers interact more with boys than with girls at all levels of schooling. U.S. adolescents spend less time in school and doing homework, more time and paid work, and have more discretionary time than their counterparts in Europe and East Asia. In my head, working a lot is more practical and helps me learn about the real world than spending time on other things. Working will get me just a little more money to help go to college so I can learn more. Socioeconomic status, SES, refers to the grouping of people with similar occupational, educational, and economic characteristics. I don't know what SES I will be in the future, but I do know that it won't be perfect. The parenting test helped me learn that nothing needs to be perfect, so I will try and remember that whether I'm in a low or high SES. Chapter 7 is all about behavioral and social cognitive approaches. Why I'm a good listener. Learning is relatively permanent influence on behavior, knowledge, and thinking skills, which comes about through experience. The test results told me that I am a good listener. I believe that I got to this point by always doing my best to listen to what something is saying to me, and over time I learned to be a good listener by repetition of that. I also think that I'm a good listener while learning information because I like observational learning, which is learning that involves acquiring skills, strategies, and beliefs by observing others. I have to be good at observing and listening to what a teacher says to retain any information from that lesson. Chapter 7 also talks about different cognitive approaches to learning. One of them is the social constructivist approaches, which focus on collaboration with others to produce knowledge and understanding. I believe that I'm a people person because of all of the group collaborations I had to do while growing up. I had to learn how to talk with and please people in my groups. My responsibility. The strategies for decreasing undesirable behaviors include using differential reinforcement, terminating reinforcement, and removing desirable stimuli, and presenting adverse stimuli. The test showed that I am responsible whenever it comes to how I learn. This is because when I learn, I know that I don't want the desirable stimuli taken away from me. Therefore, I am responsible by doing my work and listening to what I am learning. Okay, so I have learned from the parenting test that I know nothing will be perfect and I will probably have to ask God for help whenever it isn't. I have learned that I am extremely stubborn while I learn, so whenever I'm teaching, I can try to pray for God for patience in my classroom. I now know why I'm a people person. I now know that I'm a people person while learning. I will use this in my future profession by planning group activities for the people like me and solo activities for the people that don't like working in groups. I also realize that I am a creative learner. I will use this as a teacher by making my lesson plans creative so the students can have a little fun in my class. I am very responsible when it comes to learning, but I know that many students are not. I will keep this in my mind for when my future students are or are not as responsible as I am. As a teacher, I will also try to do things by the book while planning lessons because I learned that I am a very by the book person at some things. I will also probably have to ask God for help whenever I'm frustrated about something in my plan not being by the book or perfect. And here are all of my references.